snow drifted down like tired ashes from a dying fire, soft enough to disguise how bitter the cold truly was. Each step Maria Weston took sent a small puff of powder curling around her boots, but she barely felt the sting anymore. Her legs trembled not from the distance she'd walked, but from the fear still chasing her through the woods. The fear had a voice, several, actually, and she could still hear them echoing behind her in the dark places of her mind. Hand over the baby. Last chance. She clutched her daughter closer, adjusting the worn wool blanket around the tiny body. The child's breath came out warm against her collarbone, fading too quickly in the air. Just a little farther, she whispered. Though she knew the baby didn't understand the words, maybe the whisper was more for herself. The river appeared like a long, white scar through the valley, frozen solid for miles. She had crossed it dozens of times since fleeing the settlement. It had become her shortcut, her sanctuary, her silent ally. Tonight she hoped it would hide her tracks from the men hunting her. The trees thinned as she approached the bank. The world felt too quiet, no wind, no bird calls. Not even the groaning of the ancient branches under the weight of winter, just the hush of falling snow and the faint chattering of her own teeth. Maria stepped onto the frozen surface, testing the ice with her heel. Solid. Thick. The kind of ice you trusted with a horse, let alone a woman carrying a child. She inhaled shakily and began to cross. Her breath plumed into the air like smoke from a dying chimney. Halfway over, the baby stirred, letting out a soft, confused whimper. Maria stopped and bounced gently on her toes, whispering soothing nonsense. Shh. Mama's here, baby. Mama's right here. Then the sound came. A crack, sharp, violent, wrong. Maria froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She looked down. The ice beneath her was spiderwebbing in all directions. Long, thin fractures racing outward with terrifying speed. She barely had time to pull her daughter tighter before the world dropped out from under her feet. The plunge stole her breath so brutally she couldn't even scream. The river was a living thing, a beast of darkness and teeth, wrapping around her legs, her waist, her chest, dragging her down. Her lungs seized. The cold clawed at her skin like knives. She scrambled, kicking hard until her head broke the surface with a ragged gasp. The baby cried once, just a small, frightened cry before she managed to lift her above the water. Maria reached for the edge of the broken ice. Her fingers slipped off immediately. They were already stiffening. She tried again, hooking her nails into the lip. But the river tugged her backward, relentless. The baby's blanket began to soak through. Panic clawed up her throat. Please, no, not her. Her lips were so numb the words barely formed. The snowstorm thickened around her as the river fought to swallow them whole. She didn't know. Elias Granger moved through the winter, forest like a man who had long ago learned how to listen to the world. The snow muffled most sounds, but that only made the quiet more meaningful. He tracked the wounded elk with deliberate steps, noting the uneven hoofprints, the faint smear of blood on a broken branch. It should have been an easy trail. But something beneath the usual stillness pricked at the back of his mind, a tension in the air he couldn't yet name. He paused, exhaling slowly. His breath drifted upward in a fog, then disappeared into the pale morning light. He adjusted the fur collar around his neck, gripping his bow loosely. Then he heard it. A distant, unnatural crack like a gunshot, but sharper, quicker. Not a tree falling. Not ice shifting normally. Something else. Elias straightened, every instinct sharpening to a razor's edge. He waited, listening so hard he could hear his own pulse thudding in his ears. Then came a second sound, weaker but unmistakable, a cry. A small cry, a baby. He didn't think. His body simply moved, leaving the elk's trail behind. He sprinted toward the river, boots tearing through the snow with urgency. Branches whipped against his shoulders, but he didn't slow. The cry, brief, muffled, desperate, echoed again, guiding him like a beacon. When he broke through the last line of pines, he saw the river. In the jagged hole torn through the ice, a woman struggled in the black water, her face pale as the snow around her. Her arms, shaking violently, held a small bundle high above the surface. The baby's blanket, already frost-coated, was slipping. Elias felt his heart lurch. Without a word, without even a shout, he threw off his heavy coat. Snow swallowed the thud as it hit the ground. He pulled the knife from his belt and sprinted across the ice. It groaned under his weight but held. The woman's eyes met his for a split second. Wide, terrified, pleading. That was enough. He dove. The cold hit him like a hammer, crushing the air from his lungs, but he kept moving, arms stabbing through the freezing current. In a few strokes he reached her. Her lips were blue, her breath coming in faint, ragged bursts. "Take her," she gasped, lifting the baby with the last strength in her body. Elias didn't argue. With one clean slice, he cut the straps binding the child to her chest, catching the infant against his own warmth. The baby whimpered, a tiny, fragile sound. "Hold on," he growled, though he could see she was losing the ability to do so. Maria's fingers scraped weakly at the ice, but she couldn't lift herself. Elias surged upward, shoving her waist toward the jagged opening. The ice edge tore at his arms, but he ignored it. With a grunt, he pushed her onto the surface. She rolled to her side, coughing and gasping. Only then did he plant his forearm on the ice and haul himself up. Teeth clenched against the agony of the cold. He turned, placing the baby carefully in the woman's trembling arms. Maria drifted in and out of awareness, like someone caught between two storms, one outside, one inside her mind. She remembered the sharp pain of the cold, the crushing weight of the river, and then warmth, arms lifting her, a deep voice she couldn't fully understand. The sensation of being carried against a chest solid as an oak trunk, her baby tucked safely between them. After that, everything blurred into a soft, dark sleep. When she finally woke, it was to heat, real, enveloping heat that wrapped around her like a blanket laid by an unseen guardian. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, adjusting to the dim golden light flickering across wooden beams. A fire roared in a stone hearth at the far wall, casting shadows that danced over racks of drying herbs and bundles of furs. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Her heart jolted in panic until she turned her head and saw her baby sleeping beside her in a small wooden crate lined with sheepskin. The tiny rise and fall of the child's chest made Maria's breath catch in relief. Her hand shot out weakly, touching her daughter's cheek. Warm, soft, alive. A thick blanket cocooned Maria's body, tucked around her with surprising care. She tried to sit up, but her bones felt as heavy as iron. Her limbs trembled with the aftershock of the cold. Her skin still tingling painfully, a sensation crept back. From the corner of the room came a slow scrape, the sound of a chair moving. Maria flinched. Her eyes snapped toward it, wide and fearful, but her breath eased when she recognized the man. Elias Granger stood by a rough-hewn table, setting aside a small blade he'd been sharpening. His hair was still slightly damp, as if he'd just finished drying it after the river rescue. His clothes were changed, but a faint redness lingered on his hands and forearms from the icy water. "You're awake," he said in a low, steady voice. Maria swallowed, finding her throat painfully dry. "Where?" "My cabin," he replied. "Snow picked up again. Would have been death to keep you out there." She glanced at the fire, then back at him. "How long have we been here?" "About half a day. You both were near frozen." He moved closer, keeping his steps slow so he wouldn't startle her. "I kept the fire high. Fed the baby small amounts, warm goat's milk." She took it. A rush of emotion flooded Maria's chest. Gratitude so sharp it hurt. "Thank you. I don't know how to—" "You don't need to," he interrupted gently. "Just focus on getting warm." She tried to sit up again, wobbling, and he reached out instinctively before pulling his hand back, unsure if she'd welcome the help. She nodded faintly, allowing him to steady her. "I owe you our lives," she whispered, voice cracking. Elias looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "You held on to her through that river. That's what saved her. I just finished what you started." Maria blinked back tears, the warmth of the cabin. The storm outside had settled into a quiet, powdery snowfall soft enough to trick someone into believing winter had grown gentle. But Maria knew better. Winter had teeth. She had seen them, and she knew the men hunting her were far sharper than ice. Elias had stepped outside only minutes earlier to chop more wood, leaving the door slightly ajar to let in a breath of cool air. Maria rocked her baby gently near the fire, humming a tune her own mother used to sing. She wasn't sure who the lullaby was meant to soothe, her child, or the trembling place inside her heart that hadn't stopped shaking since the river. Then she heard the first hollow thud. Not wood, not footsteps. Hoofbeats. Slow at first, then growing louder, crunching snow with the confidence of men who believed they owned every inch of land beneath them. Her breath hitched. Her arms tightened around her daughter. No, please not now." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Outside, Elias stopped chopping. Silence stretched for several long seconds. Maria could imagine him standing there, body going rigid, his instincts kicking in long before his mind caught up. Then he opened the door again, calmly but with a storm in his eyes. "Horses," he said quietly. Maria's heart climbed into her throat. "It's them," she breathed. "Elias, they found us." He said nothing for a moment, scanning her face with a seriousness that made her chest compress. Then he walked to the wall and took down his rifle, the long, iron-barreled one she'd noticed above the hearth. "I'll handle it." She struggled to rise. "Maybe I should talk to them. Maybe if I explain—" "No." His voice was soft, gentle even, but unmovable. "You don't talk to men who chase a mother into a frozen river." He opened the door again, but this time he paused in the threshold. "Stay behind the fire. Don't show yourself." Maria nodded, though her entire body trembled. She sank to the floor behind the hearthstones, clutching her baby tight. She could hear the hoofbeats clearly now. 5 riders, maybe 6. The crunch of saddles, the snort of horses in the cold air. Men dismounting with the slow swagger of people who had come to collect something they believed belonged to them. Elias stepped into the clearing, rifle resting against his shoulder in a way that looked relaxed but wasn't. Snow fell around him like drifting ash, settling on his hair and coat. He looked like part of the mountain itself, immovable, carved from the land. One of the riders spoke first. "We're looking for a woman and a baby went missing from town." Elias didn't answer. Another spat into the snow. "She's a thief. Took what weren't hers. We're just here to set it right." The first man tried again, voice sharpening. "We tracked her up this way. We know she came through your land. Seen any sign?" Elias finally spoke. "She's under my roof," he said, voice calm as still water. "And the child stays with her." The men stiffened.